Community engaged learning experiences in high school are super valuable, particularly in rural education. Community connected learning can help develop durable skills. It shapes agency, identity, and purpose. It can help to influence college and career pathways. I'm Tom Vander Ark, and you're listening to the Getting Smart podcast, and we're talking about community engaged learning with friends from Eastern Tennessee, Elizabethton, and we're starting with Dustin Hensley. Dustin is transforming American education from the library of Elizabethton High School. Dustin, it's really great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom.
And Dustin has invited two alumni of his distinguished high school. We're happy to have with us Veronica Watson and Sadie Whitehead. Hi, Veronica.
Hello.
And Sadie, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
You guys had a really amazing experience in high school, and I can't wait to dive into that. But Dustin, give us a little bit of the backstory. You've been there almost 10 years, I think. Is there more community engaged learning now than there was when you got there? And if so, how'd that happen?
Yeah, for sure. I have been at Elizabethton High School since I was hired in June of 2015. So I'm getting ready to hit my 10-year anniversary. And whenever I first arrived at the high school, it's a community that I grew up in. I did not go to Elizabethton High School. I went to a very close by high school, but I knew Elizabethton High School very well. I know the community very well. So there was a lot of community love for the school, but there was not a lot of intentionality with what was happening between the school and the community. So whenever I started at the school in 2015, it was the same time that there was a national competition with XQ, the super school competition, looking to redesign the next 100 years of high school. And I found that when I was trying to find a grant to replace the flooring in the library, that we had the most like the original furniture from the library from the 1970s. The carpeting was pretty old and outdated. So I was like, I'm going to find some grant funding. I'd been a grant writer in my previous district. I'll find some money for this. And then I found the XQ competition and thought, $10 million can buy such good carpet. I'll have like bamboo flooring in the library. It'll be great. So what we did with our application was we thought, who better knows about the high school experience than students? So we give the application to our students and ask them to truly research and develop what they think the best high school experience would be for them. And one of the biggest things that came out of that was that they wanted to be part of their community. And they really didn't like it whenever we would talk about the real world, that we so often will tell them well, it'll be different in the real world, or when you're in the real world, you'll experience this. And they were like, we already live there. Like, our houses are in the real world. We work jobs. Like, we go to community events. We go to church. Like, we do all these things already with people in the community. Why do you keep telling us that school's a false reality or something? And we don't like that. So we want to be actively engaged with our community while we're learning and alongside them. So that was the forefront of our application with XQ. And we ended up being one of the first 13 XQ schools, and executed a lot of work supporting us in going towards community engaged learning in our school. Our school is a traditional comprehensive high school. We've been around since 1908. That is a lot of ingrained tradition that it doesn't necessarily want to lend itself to change and transformation.
And Dustin, you have like 400 kids?
We have 920 this school year.
Wow. So you're a pretty good sized school. And how big is the town?
Town's probably about 13,000.
So it's pretty rural, and you're way on the eastern tip of Tennessee, right?
Yes. So we are bordering Virginia and North Carolina.
Dustin, where did that instinct come from that the future would be more community engaged experiences?
Yeah, I think the crux of it came from wanting to be student-centered in action and more than just words, because we say that all the time about lots of different things, like student-centered learning and student voice, and we bandy it about a lot. But if you're not actually doing anything with it, then you're just using, buzzwords. So we wanted to hold truth to that and put it in action. And whenever the students said they want to be involved with the community, then we need to create a way and a space that they are actively with the community. So what we did with Sadie's class, she was in the first class, is we designed a course for students to do problem seeking, problem solving, and then try to create a solution, actually do what their projects. So if you see this as an issue and this is the solution you created for it, then actually go forth with a partner in the community and do that action.
So is that in like ninth grade, Dustin?
So our first couple iterations of it were specifically for junior and senior year. So that way they could leave, like they could drive themselves or get a ride to their community partners or their sites they were working.
That is very cool. Let me just say, this is really interesting, Dustin, because I just finished a blog about examples around the world of schools that are teaching community-connected learning, starting with problem finding. And I really think that's one of the most important new skills that we can teach, is to invite young people to find work that matters to do, right? Find stuff that's important to you and to your community, and to go do it. And we almost never give young people the space to do that. So what a cool instinct. So Sadie, can you think of a project or two that you were able to frame up and where you could engage in something that was important to the community?
Yeah. Well, mine kind of started with the very issue that brought on the grant finding, not carpet problems, but my mother is an educator and she was struggling with her elementary school students and keeping all of those across their experience engaged. So like a lot of her more high achieving students were sitting idle during this intervention study hall hour that they had. And she was really struggling with balancing that. And I was like, my mom's doing that. And my mom's awesome and can handle so much. I'm sure that this is something other educators are struggling with. And I just love the concept of what XQ was doing. And I was like, well, we need to get everybody on board with this. So I began basically an enrichment program, but it was bringing in those more innovative styles of learning to elementary school. So I partnered with really awesome high schoolers, and they were expert in what they were studying. We have a lot of great career and technical side of what Elizabethton does. And so I brought in health science students who were in health science classes at our school, aviation students, agriculture students. Veronica had her expertise with her computer science, and with their interesting experience in those courses, we would take it to our elementary school students and build a lesson plan together, source what we needed to from donations and other guidance from other partners as we needed to. And we took those to the kids and let those kids kind of learn in a different, cool way. And we had a great time. They had a great time. And it was really cool to see specifically these fourth and fifth graders trying something new, learning in a different way. And you could tell that like they were kind of getting used to this new freedom that it also created of a different way to learn, which was huge. And a lot of my classmates were also doing, incredible work. They were doing everything from community cleanup projects to beautification of Elizabethton, just so much of trying to invest back in our community in ways that spoke to them.
Those are great examples. Veronica, can you think of a project or two that really had an impact on you, maybe an impact on the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got really excited about this program that I jumped into it head first way too early. So actually before freshman year even started, I was at orientation in the library being like, hey, so you guys have this program, like your kids are doing this thing. How can I be involved? So I started out helping Sadie as I think I was a freshman. The timeline's a little fuzzy now because it's been some distance, but yeah, I was a freshman, but I had at that point, like a couple years of teaching experience in computer science already, specifically for elementary age students. So getting to bring that and being invited into that space, being able to hang out with my upper level peers, created a sense of community within the school that was invaluable for me socially at the time. The stereotype of being a freshman in high school is not very nice. It's like, oh, they get picked on. So being able to like be a part of something that was headed up by the seniors and stuff in the class is really awesome. And then to be able to do it in a way that furthered my professional goals. So I want to be a computer science teacher. I've decided now I want to do it at a university level, but I really care about computer science education. And so I joined their program, went to the elementary school, taught a session on Scratch, just doing basic programming and computational thinking with those students. And I really loved it. So when it was my turn the next year, sophomore year, still a year early, I made the plan to kind of expand more on my wedge of that program. So less broad like they were doing, but I wanted to get into multiple elementary schools tech time, like when they have like their specials block for computing. I wanted to actually make that useful and productive, because in my experience in a couple different school systems, that time was used for keyboarding, which is helpful, and some word and things which are useful skills, but a lot of it at times felt redundant, and it was a lot of cool math games and flash games and things under the guise of being educational. So my goal was to go into there and improve those. I pulled standards and mapped plans to standards and other school systems that were doing similar things to kind of prove the worth. And ultimately, everybody was on board. Everybody was cool with me coming in. I couldn't drive. So I had a really hard time finding other students to help me get into the schools on a regular basis. So I did unfortunately hit a little bit of a wall with that. But I just pivoted and found other projects to do that are a little bit more artsy, and also kind of just tried to help me connect more with my school community, which eventually led me to being the student liaison, which is a student position on the school board. So I got that end of junior year, and I sat for my senior year, which was, of course, the most awesome time, sarcastic, 2020. So COVID had just happened. Everything had gone remote. But I used that little bit of remote flexibility in my ability to kind of be in multiple places to try to really connect with people. The main thing that I did as a liaison was host a town hall event for students to ask the potential school board members, because it was an election year. So we were going to be bringing on more school board members. So I set up a town hall for the students to ask questions to their school board members to kind of create this level of transparency about what the school board does and what students want, and to amplify that student voice just a little bit more to create a more connected community and a little bit more clarity, because a lot of students are really good at finding problems, and they have a lot of them, and they get angry about them sometimes, and they have all of this passion, but it was often misdirected or unguided, and they didn't know who to bring their problems to. They kept bringing it to teachers or their administrators, not knowing that they really needed to take it all the way to the school board level to actually enact any kind of change. So I made that my initiative to kind of be this liaison between the students and the school board to kind of break down that barrier. I think when I was trying to get elected, because it was an elected position, which was super daunting for me because I was a nerdy little kid. I did not have a lot of friends. I won no popularity contests. I had beef with SGA. And so I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this, but I wanted it. And I think I wanted it more than pretty much anybody else who was running. So I went and did the really scary thing. And I went up to each group in the lunchroom, every group of kids at the table. And I was like, hey, so we're voting for this thing. First said, I'm like, can I bother you for a minute? And if they said no, I kept walking, which that alone got me a vote or two. Cause like, sure, whatever. I'm not here to, ruin your lunch. But then if they said I could, then I would tell them about the position, tell them about the school board and why I thought I could do a good job at it. And because of that self-advocacy, I got the position, and it was great. And I was able to do at least some meaningful work. COVID definitely put a hindrance on, I think, the fullest I could do. But yeah.
So that's awesome. I want to note that both of you described powerful learning experiences that took place in a class, but both of you also described sort of leadership roles that you created or stepped into that were outside of class. So I love that you experienced community connected learning both in traditional ways in a class, but also outside a class setting. Dustin, is that fair to say now that community connected learning shows up in a variety of ways across the day at your high school?
Yeah, for certain. That has been a priority that our school has put in place we were able to just hire a community partnership coordinator this past school year so we could really focus on making sure that on the curriculum end that we can make communication learning like our big focus for the school, because we've talked for so long about what a powerful community that we have and how much they love our high school. But now it's time, like, okay, how do we really make Elizabethton this learning ecosystem in which the high school is the hub of learning? And that's something that we've been really upfront about, is that everyone here is a learner. That whether you are a teacher, a student, an administrator, the mayor, whoever you are still a learner as a human. And we want you to be part of these learning experiences with our young people. So we've had a lot of our presentations of learning now will include audiences from the community, whether it's professors from our local university or public officials, nonprofit execs, whoever it might be. We're seeing a lot of people from the outside coming in and working with our students. Something that I've been really fortunate to be part of the past year is East Tennessee State University's Honors College has moved completely towards community engaged learning now. And their program is called the Changemaker Scholars Program. And my community improvement class that these two were part of has now vertically aligned curriculum-wise with the beginning class to the Changemaker Scholars Program. So that way we're able to do a lot of co-teaching, that their students are going to start coming to do mentoring work with our students on teaching how to do the problem seeking and problem solving. Because I do that work with them. Like, we use design thinking, we look at empathy mapping and things like that. But I see problems a lot differently as a 35-year-old than they do as 17-year-olds. And if a 20-year-old is working with them as a mentor, they can see problems much more similarly than I might be able to have that perspective.
I love that. And you're the librarian there. You have
Yes.
completely imagined what it means to be a librarian. You're really transforming that community and the sort of new way that you're leading through community connected learning. It's very exciting. Veronica, did it change how you experienced college, like where you went and what your expectations were and sort of how you engaged in a tech-centered degree program?
Yes. Short answer. Not even to be dramatic, but it's kind of changed my whole life up to this point. It definitely forked me off in a direction that I have seen continuous benefit from. Having this understanding and constantly changing definition of what community is and how I play a role in it, and the two-way street that it is, what I can give to my community and what my community would give to me. Having that basis just kind of made me a more empathetic person. It made me care a lot more about pretty much everything I was doing. It gave me a sense of purpose. I can go to college, I can get a degree, and I can have a career path. A lot of people do that because you need to live to a certain extent. Not everybody needs to go to college, but finding some sort of career outline is a necessity. But having this opportunity to engage and look at things through a lens of community gave me the opportunity to not only pick a career, but see how I can, impact others and how that's going to grow me as a person too. I applied for 2 colleges. One was MIT and one was East Tennessee State University. I did not get into MIT. And a large part of that, I think, is because my heart really wasn't in it. I had started really growing roots here. And I use here kind of broadly. I'm in a different city now. I'm in Johnson City, but they're sister cities. It's the same region. So that's my community. But so, yeah, I had started growing some roots here. I was starting to kind of like it, find my niche, find my flow. So I liked the idea of staying local. I was very blessed to have a full ride scholarship that emphasized and fostered leadership and provided opportunities to grow as a leader in unique ways. And using that, it kind of also helped me form a bigger picture than just my classwork. How is my classwork going to improve the lives of my life and others? Especially in computer science. Oh my gosh, that's a whole other world of can of worms. It's such a unique program. The people in it are unique and so smart that it's intimidating at times. But being able to be in that space and have this understanding of community to kind of really bring a human element to something that can be so logical and critical, I think really gave me a unique edge. And I'm going to continue to carry that into grad school when I get a degree in AI and machine learning. So how this sense of humanity can be brought into something like AI and the ethics of it all, I'm really excited to dive into.
It's a really beautiful testimony. Dustin, we call this some of what we've been talking about place-based learning. And what you guys have done in the last 8 years is invited kids to own their community, like to take it on and engage with it, try to make it better. And we just heard Veronica describe how that changed her life, how she grew roots and really appreciated the assets of Eastern Tennessee. This really is life-changing work, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And that's something that is necessary for our region. That something that we've known here for a very long time is that we need to be the ones to save ourselves, whether it be from economic disparity or the drug
Yeah.
epidemic. There are a lot of issues that we face here in Eastern Tennessee and Appalachia as a whole. But if we are helping our young people not just build those roots, but build the skills and help them understand how to use them across different contexts,
Yes.
that is so meaningful. And being able to see the fruit of the labor that we put in 10 years ago and seeing like where the students are now, that they're in career and making such a difference that those investments were worth it. So that's what makes everything so powerful, is seeing how they're becoming not just like productive members of society, but like flourishing members of society who are making it a better place.
Yeah, we heard about deeper learning that took place. We heard about what Charles Fidel calls meta learning, like where you're learning about your own learning, right? And both of you, Sadie and Veronica, both talked about that, of coming to a better understanding of how you learn and how other people learn and how you can contribute to learning. Sadie, you talked about that, like you understood your own learning and then you jumped into a role where you were helping little kids learn, and often teaching can be the best way to learn yourself. So I love that this community engaged learning really promoted deeper learning and meta learning. Sadie, did it change how you thought about college, how you engaged with college? I know you went down to Chattanooga for what did you find community engaged learning there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the most challenging part can be putting yourself in those situations where you are going to like get connected and you are going to be somebody who becomes invested in, whether it be a community, an institution, an organization, putting yourself out there to really behave as a citizen or a community member, team member. That takes a lot of courage, and we don't get a lot of practice at that in high school. We're expected to be in that seat, and we take attendance, and but active participation is not necessarily always a requirement. And it might show in your grades, but it's not always something, something that's required. But with the difference in having that experience in the community improvement course is that if I didn't actively apply myself, if I didn't care, then nobody was going to do it for me. I was held accountable for sure, but in a different way, in a very empowering way. And then when I got to UTC, Chattanooga, I didn't know a single soul. And I had to use all those skills all over again. And so I got really involved with student leadership programs. So it's in our student government association. I was actually external communications director for several years and then served on the student affairs committee. And all of that was more of kind of making those connections of how do we get other people involved in the things going on in their school and in their community? How do we as student leaders kind of be the torch holders for that whole concept? And then uh, more than that, it's changed definitely the career paths that I've taken and how I've grown in those ways. I currently work for a nonprofit that is doing a lot in the community of Chattanooga. And so it's kind of necessary to the job to figure out how do you get involved with the people who are leading.
You're like the volunteer coordinator. So you're wrangling volunteers, you're building community like one person at a time.
I think that I've always just loved connecting people to purpose and mission. And like, people already have inherent passions and talents. Like, we're born with them, and then some things we learn over time and we get very good at. But then how do we then go about utilizing it? And how can you make your passions be, bigger? It could be a career. It could be even just something you do in your spare time. And I think that I just love people who love things, and I love people who are just good at things. And so I want to do what I can to empower them to utilize those talents and skills. And actually, while being in the community improvement class, I got the opportunity to present 2 different times to our local community, and we invited nonprofit leaders. We invited members from colleges and leadership from colleges. We invited a lot of different people to these things, and I had 2 different experiences where I then got approached, and one of which was I was able to be an intern for United Way based on one of those presentations. And so even in our small United Way in Elizabethton, I got to then go into those rooms and those meetings and get to understand all of the people coming in to request funding and assistance from the United Way. And I got to learn even more from that experience. And so I think that that's just been where I've stayed and where I've kind of found home, is working with those nonprofit leaders that are giving back. And I think that what's so vital, especially Dustin and Veronica, they live there still, and I have a different perspective because I've moved away. But in a town that's that small, all of us have to pitch in to make it as great as it can be. And in a big city like this, you can get lost, and if you kind of don't do anything, things will still get done. But in a small rural community like Elizabethton, I cherish the fact that so many people pitch in because it's just what's expected. It's what you have to do to make it beautiful, to make it grow, to make it exciting for everybody. And I think that that's why this has been the perfect thing for that small community, because it's just called that to action even further.
All right, Veronica's the computer scientist on the call. I have this hunch that generative AI just might help us do more and better community engaged learning. It might help on that problem finding. It might help on the solution creation. It might help on impact delivery. What's your take? Can it be helpful in doing more and better community connected learning?
Yeah, I think AI can be helpful in a lot of different spaces. Really, it boils down to intentionality and education. So we have to understand what AI is and how to use it ethically and conscientiously and with the right intentions. It's in much like a lot of things in life, it's going to exist on a pendulum. So we're going to see it swing to one extreme and then another before it levels out into being something useful and good. I definitely think it can help with community things, but I mean, I'm not going to walk down the street and start talking to an AI model. I'm going to walk down the street and start talking to, a guy named Matthew or some person. And so, yes, while AI is an incredible synthesis tool to bring large amounts of information to a consumable level, I don't think it will ever actually replace or be able to replicate the power of people in a community. It can definitely be a tool. If you feed it, 1,000 data set in an Excel sheet, this is the census data for our city. It can answer questions about that census data in a lot quicker of a way than somebody sitting down and reading and crunching those numbers themselves. It cannot answer moral questions safely yet. It cannot answer a lot of things that are innately human. It can't be creative. It can't be empathetic. And it can't self-reflect yet either.
I appreciate how you and Sadie both have talked about people first, making connections, building relationships, making a difference. Dustin, take us out with a word of advice for the ed leaders that are listening in. Can you do this anywhere? Can any school add more community engaged learning of the sort that we've talked about?
Yeah, for sure. Regardless of what kind of community you're in, whether it be rural or suburban, wherever you might be, you have a community in your school and you have a community around your school. And I think one of the most important things that you need to remember when doing this type of learning with students and doing problem seeking, problem solving, is to let them do the work. I've seen other places try to do this, and teachers immediately give the answers to the students. They're like, oh, I think this would be a great solution to that. And this would be a good solution. That's not the point. If you're doing all the cognitive lift, then the students are learning from this process. Go work at a nonprofit. That's what you're trying to do. So let the students do the work and trust them. You're there to guide them. A lot of times, student would tell me, I want to work on this. And I would say, here are the reasons I think that will not work. But if you want to prove me wrong, then prove me wrong, because your heart's in the right place and you're wanting to do it the right way. I will give you advice, but you right here, you are the person doing the work, and you're the one that cares about this, and it's your community. So trust in the students and let them have that freedom, and let them know that they have the safety to fail, that you're there to support them and give them that safety net, that they can try these big ideas, that we want them to be involved with their community. So even if you have a tiny community, you still have a community that is your school building and the tiny space around it and the families that live there. So no matter where you are, I say this is something that everyone should look forward to and implement in their schools. I will say that we are getting ready to start a learning network in Appalachia. That's going to be called the Appalachian Futurism Project. So there'll be a lot of information coming out about that soon, but a lot of that will be focused on community engaged learning and how to take the history and culture of Appalachia and the context that we have, and have our students, and how to teach our students the skills to build their own future for Appalachia.
That's beautiful. Dustin Hensley, he's changing the world from a library at Elizabethton High School in East Tennessee. Veronica and Sadie, loved your stories, appreciate your passion. It's very cool to hear about the kind of community engaged learning experiences that you had and how it changed you and how that changed your community. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks to our producer, Mason Pasha, and the whole Getting Smart team that makes this possible. And until next week, keep learning, keep leading, and keep framing up community engaged learning experiences for kids. See you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Getting Smart podcast today. We want this podcast to be actionable, insightful, and a great way to learn about what's next in learning. In order to stay on the cutting edge, we need people in the field to tell us what they're hearing, what they're wanting, and what they're needing to learn more about. Got a topic or a guest in mind? Send your recommendations to me, Mason at gettingsmart.com. And if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to leave a review in Apple Podcasts or subscribe wherever you listen. Feel free to share the podcast on social media using the hashtag GSPodcasts. Thanks so much.